Welcome to the podcast Above the Cloud, Stories from the Boardroom. In every episode, we interview business leaders who are navigating the complex world of B2B marketing. Whether you're trying to grow revenue, swoop into a new market, or launch new products, we promise you've landed in the right spot. And now your host, Richard Byrd.
Today on Above the Clouds, Stories from the Boardroom podcast, we have a very special guest, Mr. Chris Barnhill, and he is the Director of Marketing for Skyven Technologies. How you doing, Chris? Good to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm doing all right. Richard, how about yourself?
Oh, man, better than I deserve. Better than I deserve for sure. Well, we always like to kick off our podcast with kind of a fun question. And so, thinking about your company, Skyven Technologies, if your company was a bird, what kind of bird would you be?
That is a good question. And I think it kind of lines up well with Skyven. A lot of what we do is kind of sky themed. So one of our products is called Arcturus, and it's one of the brightest stars out there. So it kind of has that sky theme, and that bird plays nicely into that theme. So I think there's really two that kind of do a good job of it kind of associating with Skyven, and one we're a startup. But one that stood out to me was kind of a peregrine falcon. So speed, sharp focus. And I think as a company, we really target opportunities and have to be strategic and make some high impact moves. So that's one. And then if I'm allowed to do a second one, I really think from a team standpoint of kind of team dynamic, really kind of operate. We're very synchronized. We're instinctive collaborators across the company, right? Across functions. When you're a smaller team, you kind of have to be. And everyone's talented and has their own way. So we kind of move together and we're unstoppable. And I will admit I had to look up what would be a good type of bird to describe all those things I just said. And what kind of came up was, and I wasn't familiar with this is what they were called, but a murmuration of starlings. Was kind of what kind of grasped all those different things. So I think those are two kind of opposites, but do a good job of explaining kind of what we're doing at Skyven and from a team and a company standpoint.
Yeah, that's great. That's two great answers. You got the peregrine falcon, or those are cool birds for sure. And then I love it. We have the starlings here, and be sitting at a stoplight, and they're just kind of flying around all together. You go, how do they orchestrate that? It's just amazing that they can flock like that. Cool, man. Well, look, Chris, just we've known each other for a long time, but maybe walk the audience a little bit through your background and how you wound up in your role today.
Yeah, it's been a fun journey. I think what do I say? Kind of 18 plus years of on this kind of marketing career journey, which has been great. And for me, it really started when I went to college, university, went to Clemson in South Carolina and went in with the marketing. That's what I wanted to do, and joined from there and kind of landed in the industry that everyone dreams of being a part of. And that's the industrial valve industry, right? I mean, didn't even know it existed, knew nothing about valves, and the opportunity of an internship popped up, and I took it, and kind of the rest is history. So again, didn't know the industry existed, but came in. They needed some help more from a marketing analyst type approach. So really doing some research on industries, market sizing, competition, and really gathering all that information that's really needed to help drive strategies and just kind of learn what's going on. So it worked out well. I think it was a great way for me to, as you go into a new industry, it was a great way to learn all about it, right? And I'm not an engineer by background, and the valve industry can be very, very engineering. So learning all that along the way too has been very, very important. But from that role, kind of moved into more of this marketing and communications, kind of internal, external communications, which is obviously very important. And then a lot of that at that time was events, trade shows. Had a great opportunity to travel kind of all over and visit new places and build brand awareness along the way. And then from there, kind of moved actually to another valve company. So kind of once you're in the valve industry, you kind of stay there, and really got involved in more of a strategy implementation lead generation, all those type of things of actually implementing these strategies and starting to work more kind of cross-functionally, right? So make obviously sales, but with engineering, product development, all those different functions, and kind of how that all kind of relates and how we communicate inside and outside the walls. And then from there, just quickly, kind of moved into leading our innovation group, which at the time was one, I think, still kind of super cool, especially for the industrial valve industry. There was a lot of focus on, hey, let's really understand our customer. Let's talk to them and see what their pain points are. And can we create a product or adjust a product that we have that helps solve those problems, right? So it was a cool experience, kind of a startup mentality, a lot of testing and learning, busting assumptions, and then helping lead teams through that process. So that's kind of what got me to where I am today. A couple of years ago, made the move over to Skyven, which was a big jump in the sense of coming from a global matrix kind of organization to a startup of about 20 people. Was a big change, but something that was a unique opportunity and really kind of believe in what we're doing here. So now, yeah, focused on a lot of those same things from throughout the career to brand awareness, thought leadership, to really kind of tell the Skyven story. And we'll get into this hopefully a little bit later, but Skyven is still in the industrial space, so it didn't go too far away from the valves. But yeah, ended up here, and it's been a great journey so far, and probably maybe halfway there to the end of the journey. We'll see.
Oh man, one of the things that you talked about there was the valve industry, industrial valves, and that is such a fascinating industry to me because it is so big, so much bigger than you think it is. And I remember we've worked with several valve companies, and I'll go in, I'll say, oh, do you know such and such company? You know such and such company? We work with them, and they're so vertically focused. They're like, oh yeah, we never even heard of those guys. And I'm like, well, they're a pretty big company, and yeah, no, we don't really come across them. And so just how many valve companies there are, and the types of valves and everything else, and also how complex it is. It's one of those industries that you're like, how it's a valve, like they're like ball valves, and there's like 3 or 4 gate valves. There's like a handful of types of valves. How complex could it be? And then you get in, you go, oh my gosh, this is a crazy industry. There's just so many companies and so many specialties, and like we only focus on nuclear applications, and we only focus on oil and gas or what have you. So and it's those things are critical to any process industry. Valves are. And so It's really, so if there's anything that gets made where there's liquids or gases flowing, then valves are a big part of it. So that's probably a really good way to set you up and get you into the industry, to stay in that industry. And I think another thing you highlighted there that was really interesting to me is the fact that when you get out of school, you weren't a little boy going, I want to be in the industrial valve industry. But you get in there and then you go, wow, this is interesting and fascinating. And then you meet people, and that just puts your career progression on a certain path. And you just, you wake up and you go, wow, I've been doing this for 18 years.
It's true. Yeah. It's like I said, didn't know it existed. And then you realize, marketing, specific to marketing, has a place in there, right? There's a lot of opportunity. And I think going through at school, at least for me, or my mindset was, oh, this is I want to do advertising to like consumers and those type of things, right? That's like in my mind what marketing was when I started. Sure. And you land in this and see it's just a whole nother opportunity. So yeah. It's kind of crazy.
I took the similar path. I was like, I'm definitely going to be doing TV commercials. That was what when I was showing my age a little bit, but that was the thing to do in advertising. And I even chose my college because I was able to work under the professor who was a copywriter for the Miller Lite, tastes great, less filling commercials. And I was like, man, that's it. That's the best. Oh man. Well, one of the things you also said in there is you work with a lot of engineers, and I think that's true of a lot of people in the B2B space, especially, people in the industrial or more technical industries in the B2B space. I'll give you, hopefully it's a compliment, but I assumed you were an engineer. And the reason why I always assumed you're an engineer is because you're so knowledgeable about your products and those kinds of things that I was like, well, he really knows his stuff. He's an engineer that knows how to talk about this stuff.
Well, I appreciate it. I do think that is a compliment. I'll take that as a compliment. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, with valves and really any kind of technical engineer type product, right? There's, you've got to be able to talk about it. And I think you probably know as well, no knock to the engineers, but it can be a lot of information, right? And okay, how do we make that digestible to the right audience is always the challenge. So that kind of technical communications and marketing is important.
Oh yeah, but if you can't speak engineer in this space, you won't enjoy your time in the B2B industrial markets.
No, and there's a time right, that long form, detailed information is needed, and then how do we kind of take from that and kind of repurpose it into different kind of formats that's usable in different parts of the journey.
Yeah. Well, thanks for taking us down your journey. It's an interesting road. Now tell us a little bit about Skyven. What's Skyven Technologies all about?
Yeah, so we help industrial manufacturers improve their efficiencies, reduce their operating costs, and reduce their emissions. And we do that at no cost to them. So this is where you kind of say, wait, what?
It's an interesting business model.
You're just giving things away. We deliver emissions-free industrial steam, and we do that at the lowest cost possible with no capex required. So we have a steam-generating heat pump. That's our cutting-edge technology. And we install that on-site at an industrial manufacturer in parallel to their existing steam generation system. So most likely natural gas boilers or something similar to that. So all of their existing systems stay on site as kind of redundancy and backup. And we install this through our business model, which is energy as a service. So we go out and find all the grants, incentives, state level, federal, beyond, third-party project financing. We find all the money needed to make the project happen. And then what we do is we share the savings with the customer. So once we're up and running, the customer sees a big improvement on their operating expenses, just from not having to burn as much natural gas, the improved efficiencies, and then we share those savings across the life of the contract. So that's kind of what we're doing. I think I was able to weave in all my marketing blurbs in there. So, but yeah, that's what we're doing at Skyven, and a huge opportunity. One from an emissions reductions, but also just with industrial manufacturers, margins are thin, right? So how do we improve efficiencies? How do we improve reduce costs to do what we're doing with no impact to operations? That's the plan.
Wow, that is really interesting. So just 100% performance based profit, or engagement. So that is really interesting, because I think that when you're a new technology, people in the industrial space can be a little skeptical. And they hear a lot of claims, and they are interested in, like you said, performance. They're working with razor thin margins. They have a lot of expenses to run those plants. So, being able to come in and say, look, we'll do all the legwork for you. We'll get all the incentives. We'll do all the financing. And then we're just going to take a percentage of the savings. That's got to be a great value proposition. How'd you guys come across that model?
Yeah, and so prior to becoming the steam generating heat pump, which is our product now, Skyven started more of a tech agnostic approach of, hey, we'll find different products or solutions that can improve your efficiencies and reduce emissions. But that energy as a service model was kind of the starting point, and that has carried over to obviously what we're doing today. But really just saw a hurdle in the marketplace, right? A lot of these types of projects, you're fighting for those capex dollars at a facility, and a lot of times we would see, hey, those either emissions reductions or efficiency improvement projects would just slowly fall down the list, right? And they would never be implemented. Maybe people didn't have the resources to really do a project like this. So we really noticed that was a huge hurdle to get these types of projects to happen. And realize, hey, if we can help fund them essentially at the front end, take on the full ownership of the whole project from design to implementation to operations and maintenance, take that off their plate. Obviously, the facility is heavily involved in the process and approvals and everything that goes along with that. But it was just a way we saw that could really help make these projects happen, and have really seen some positive feedback for the projects that are installed and operating and doing what they're supposed to do.
How could they possibly say no?
Right? Dream, right?
Well, we'll probably nothing's ever as simple as it sounds, so we'll talk about that here in a little bit, I'm sure. But talk to me a little bit about the technology. So it's just a bolt on to their existing operations. Is that right?
It's installed on site outside of their existing process. So it's not, there's no, you got to tear out your boiler room to put this in. It's all outside of the process, and we connect into two places at the facility. So either at the steam header or the direct use of the steam. And then we also connect into a waste heat source. So what we're doing in a lot of these manufacturing facilities, obviously they're using steam to drive their process, and they need a certain temperature pressure to do what they need to do. So throughout the process, that steam loses that temperature and pressure, and then the facility can no longer use it. It's not usable to them. So a lot of times when you're driving by these facilities, you'll see kind of the steam being dumped to atmosphere. They'll vent it to atmosphere. So what we do is we capture that waste heat and, for lack of better words, upcycle it back through our system, and then put in the same boiler quality steam with no emissions into the process. So that's it. It's an industrial heat pump, steam generating heat pump. We use what's called mechanical vapor recompression, is a proven technology that's been around for quite a while and in the industrial space to help the process. But yeah, it's an industrial heat pump that reduces emissions and improves efficiencies.
That's really interesting. I know we were driving past some sort of processing plant. I know it was on the east side of town, my wife and I, and she's like, look at all that pollution going in the air. And I was like, no, that's just steam. She's like, how do you know? It's like, well, it's because it's white. It looks like a cloud. It's just steam. And so she's like, well, it seems, why do they have to release that? And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't know why they release that. And so this helps understand that. And they don't have to release it, right? You just take that and reprocess it and heat it back up. And there's zero waste.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. Okay. Well, how does your team work? So you got a small team. Some of the people who have been on the show have worked for really large companies, but maybe they still have a small marketing team in their company. Have you guys set it up over there?
Yeah. So when I started 2 years ago at Skyven, was a team of one. I think there were 20 total people in the company. And over the last 2.5 years, we've grown to right to 50. So a decent amount of growth for what we're doing. And from a marketing standpoint, we've got myself and kind of she wears a lot of hats, but director of communications and policy, kind of government relations, amongst other things. But that's the team. And what we kind of focus and work on is really kind of that communications, the messaging strategy. Work very closely with the sales team, which is it's a great setup. A lot of I'm sure you've heard it, when sales and marketing aren't aligned, that's not a good thing, right? And it's not always as easy as it should be. But man, here we're aligned. We're communications going both ways. And it's really a really good team from a marketing and sales, and then obviously everybody else within Skyven. But wear a lot of hats, and kind of going back to our Byrd theme of we're strategic in how we operate, and do it with intensity and as a team.
Man, that's fantastic. That's something we see a lot, is that sales and marketing are very disparate segments in the organization, and to see that you guys have a lean, mean machine that is, where sales and marketing working hand in hand, that gives you a lot of advantages. I would say, compared to maybe some of your larger competitors who are, you've got the marketing people here doing their thing and salespeople out there hustling deals, and never shall the two ever meet.
Exactly.
It's just not the best approach.
It is not. And you and I have kind of talked over the years too, of even outside of sales, right? The importance of other functions. There's just so many different touch points that marketing can play a big role in. So, yeah, it's a good team here.
Yeah. How closely do you work with the technology teams?
Here and in previous roles, I mean, it's definitely a key thing, especially if we're talking, I mean, a new product, right? How do we communicate this to the marketplace? Is it solving problems that are out there, right? So yeah, work closely with engineering, product development, project development, all of those during kind of creation of the technology, launch of the technology, and then there's also obviously all the feedback that comes once it's out in the marketplace and operating, and what kind of feedback we can get from a customer standpoint. So yeah, marketing to me touches pretty much any and every function inside the building.
Yeah, well, and I think the other thing that's interesting about your industry, and it's interesting you have a government affairs person right there in staff, because that's something that companies outsource a lot of times, but I could see that being with all the regulatory compliance and things like that. I can imagine that she stays pretty busy in that role.
Yes. It's and I'll be honest, that was a newer thing from my background, right? In the government relations and advocacy and policy and all those. But it's really important, as like you said, as there's different regulations being passed and funding opportunities and grants and incentives from local government to federal to even your local utility could have incentives, and how all that plays together is important.
Yeah, we work with some aerospace companies in the past, and they have a person who's sitting in DC. All those companies, they're just doing what you described. We're trying to understand incentives, trying to understand what's coming across in the bills, how much budget the government is going to chip into their programs, what NASA's going to be up to, and they just are feet on the street. And in DC, understanding all those things and having those conversations is just critical to that industry for sure.
And it really just quickly drives that energy as a service model too, right? So we're out there looking for the right funding, incentives. It could be tax credits, carbon credit, whatever it ends up being, to help make these projects happen. So yeah, being close to that is important.
Yeah, well, especially the days we find ourselves in. What's one thing, it sounds like you've been in that role for a while, and you're comfortable there, and things are kind of moving in and shaking. What's one thing today that you wish you would have known on day one?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the easy answer is how to use all the new tools that came along with jumping to a startup. Kind of joking, but Slack, Guru, Google Suite, all these tools that I'm like, I gotta figure out how to do all these things. But in all seriousness, I think, moving to a startup was obviously, knew that was going to be a big change, and it's been great. But I think kind of learning that progress really beats perfection. You kind of always hear that, don't let perfect get in the way of good enough. And I've always kind of used that, but coming in, I think any new role really, right? You come in and we got to do everything exactly perfect and make sure every I's dotted, T's crossed, every word's perfect. But yeah, I think if this applies to any role, but really looking back saying, hey, just progress it beats perfection every time. And I think that's been a big thing here and then really any other role too. But just that startup environment, right? Speed, testing, iteration, let's go, we're moving. You can't let perfection get in the way of good enough.
Yeah, move fast and break things.
Exactly.
That is definitely a mindset that startups really embrace, and they have to, because things are there. But when you're at a big global matrix organization, they don't like to think that way, especially engineering-led companies. They're like, everything's got to be perfect, because if we're not perfect, things break and people might die, and all those things that in that engineering mindset is not about. Hey, let's just move fast and see what works. You don't want that mindset when you're driving across a bridge that was engineered.
That's right.
So yeah, cool. That. Do you like that pace better?
I do, and I think it lines up. I mean, especially from a marketing standpoint too, right? Especially in this day and age with all the digital things, where you can test some things out pretty quickly and test and learn and bust some assumptions. So it lines up well with that. But I do enjoy just that speed, being agile, and again, if it doesn't work, okay, to go to something else, right? So. And being able to have that authority to do that too, right? That's also kind of in some companies, they, like you said, let's play it safe. Let's not try anything that's outside of our comfort zone. So, but yeah, I enjoy the pace. It's keeps it refreshing.
Yeah, that is something that I'll warn you, it would be very hard for you to go back to that slower bureaucratic pace. It is one of those things that once you break free of that and you go, wow, look, this is how other people do it, and we don't have to ask permission for 20 people that all have to put their rubber stamp on it. We work with big enterprise companies, and we also work with startups and everything in between, and it's really interesting. We're like, what's the approval process look like for your organization? We're used to asking that for enterprise level clients, because we need to know, like, okay, well, we got to get it passed through 10 people in order to get the seal of approval. And those people, might take 2 weeks each to look at it, and you have to hound them about it the whole time. And then when you ask somebody at a smaller enterprise that, they're like, well, what do you mean? You're like, how many people? Like, well, just me. Great.
Sign it right now.
Like, perfect. Let me ask you this. So from a sales and marketing perspective, what are the biggest obstacles that you guys face? Because it sounds like, you were talking about, you've got this performance-based model, and, there's no, just the technology just plugs right in, no risk. Seems like it should be a slam dunk to sell that. What are the obstacles you guys see?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think some of these will probably resonate across industries, but for us, it's really just that mind share, right? There's so much information out there when you're talking to a customer. They're getting hit with tons and tons and tons of information. If it's on the web, if it's on the internet, if it's other companies calling them, if it's from the news, whatever it is, right? There's just so much information out there. And so I'm being able to fight through that noise and gain that mind share is difficult. Obviously that's kind of marketing's role, is to kind of how do we do that? But even specific to industrial electrification, emissions reduction, efficiency improvement, there's just so many different things out there right now that from carbon capture to heat pumps, to thermal energy storage, to hydrogen, to solar power, all these different things, right? And it's not necessarily you just have to pick one of those and that's what you go with. A lot of these, they work together, and figuring out how to take advantage of all of them is the goal. So I think that's the biggest thing. And then just from a specific to what we're doing, is really what we kind of talked about earlier, is understanding that these projects can happen without all that upfront capex, right? It's really the education of this energy as a service model, and really making sure that's understood. And that really touches, from a sustainability manager to finance is obviously going to be involved in that from a customer side, their operations, their engineering team, their site level personnel. So it touches a lot of people. So being able to understand how that energy as a service model impacts all those different areas, and making sure they understand it, right? I mean, that's what we've got to do. So those would probably be the biggest obstacles, and luckily marketing is here to help support those.
Yeah, just to dig a little deeper on that, what kind of what are you telling the market about that? How are you capturing that thought leadership?
From an energy as a service standpoint, or
yeah, just from an energy as a service, because that's an interesting concept. And I think sometimes, we always think about marketing is always solving a problem. and and sometimes you solve a problem that the customer doesn't know they have, or has gotten used to.
Exactly.
And they're like, hey, that's just the way we've always done it. We've been running our plant like this for this long. It's fine. Uptime is, good. It could be better, but they have a very finite, view of their industry and the challenges they face. So sometimes, when you're coming in with a novel approach, they go, what? Why do I want that? What is that? What's that all about? And that seems like energy as a service seems like one of those things that they would go, what are you talking about over there?
Yeah. It's a good point. And I think the biggest thing that helps, and we have this, is a case study, right? There's a project implemented, it's using it, it's doing what it says. We kind of can have something to show, right? It's a lot easier to prove something out when it's up and running and doing what it's supposed to do. So that definitely helps. But really, I think the talking points around that energy as a service, like I said earlier, to those different, we'll call it, groups of people within a customer landscape of from finance, what is a energy as a service type project mean for them on the finance side, from operations to sustainability to engineering, all those different, and being able to talk through that and see how that all impacts a project of this magnitude, because they're large projects. And then outside of the energy service, making sure it's clear that, hey, there's no impact to your operations, right? That's always a no-no to especially industrial manufacturers. Like, hey, we can't go down, like we can't turn the plant off, we can't stop doing what we're doing, right? So being able to show that, hey, this energy as a service allows these projects to happen and allows what we say is going to happen from a technology and operations standpoint to happen with no impact operations, but also from a resource and time standpoint too, is a part of that conversation. And like you said, it's intriguing enough from the just that little nugget. You're like, okay, I need to learn more about this. So being able to talk about that and explain what that actually means to a specific facility and project is really helpful.
Yeah, I can imagine. One of the things you said there that I can see makes things complicated is it seems like you've got a lot of stakeholders that are involved in that consensus-based, buying environment. And so, they all, sounds like the people that you have there, from finance to, technology, all those different people are going to have very, very different goals. And how do you go about aligning all that with them? I guess that means producing a lot of content, I would think.
It can. I mean, I think number one is where we've found to be helpful is really having that internal champion on the customer side, right? So in getting them the information they need to have those conversations if needed on their side. But that's always very important in any of these type of projects, is having that internal champion that really understands from the operation floor all the way up to the C-suite what this project means. But to your point, yeah, from a marketing standpoint, being able to have the right messaging, the right content, the right document, the right web page, whatever it ends up being, to help make our champion their job easier, right? I know I always remember you and I talked in the past of like, hey, making them the hero, right? What can we get them to make them be able to be the hero? And that's I mean, that's marketing in general, but all along the steps of this is making sure we have what we need to make that process easier on the customer side.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think that's a great piece of advice, especially in this day and age. I think it is people are less likely to take risks in their organizations. They don't want to be the person who says, I've really put my name behind this new technology and it's not going to affect our operations and it's going to be easy to install. It's really going to help our organizations. I'm willing to put my name behind this. Yeah. Boy, those people are rare. It's people don't like to stick their neck out for new things they don't know exist. And so that speaks very highly to you guys and your sales team as well, to be able to talk to those people and get a champion like that to put this on their back and put their name behind it and really take charge in the organization and start having some of those conversations with those people in an organization like that.
Yeah, I mean, steam has been generated in the industrial space pretty much the same way for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? So to your point, for someone to come in like, hey, what about doing it this way? Like, it's a little bit of an ask. So, yeah, that's good.
What would you say are the biggest misconceptions about your industry?
I mean, a big one, and we've kind of touched a few times so far, but just that these projects can happen without having all the capex available, right? I mean, that's always the big hurdle for any of these type of projects. Hey, sounds good, but we want to spend our capital dollars on this part of the facility to make sure it's up and running. We can't, so we get it. So that's a big one. So being able to make these large capital projects happen with no capital from the customer is a big one. And then I think more from a kind of the technical side of our industry and what we're doing. So I mean, we're playing in the industrial electrification side, so we're electrifying steam production. So there's always the misconception, well, electricity is more expensive than natural gas, so why would we even entertain this? And then the heat pump, and then ours specifically, is that much more efficient than a natural gas boiler, where we can offset that price difference. I mean, sometimes it's 3-4x more efficient, up to 8 times more efficient than a natural gas boiler. So wow. That's a big one. I mean, because most people's mind go, well, I know my electricity costs more than my natural gas, so why would I even? So that's a big one. So being able to have that conversation too is helpful.
Yeah, and as you think about the way people can take their electricity and use clean sources of renewable energy in order to generate that energy, as a lot of these, that's part of the way a lot of these plants are thinking about the future and how they're going to do that. Or, is solar going to be a part of it? Or are they going to go with hydrogen or whatever to generate that electricity and generate that power for their facilities? So then it gets really effective. Your CO2 score, your emissions go way down, and you get even more environmentally friendly with something like that.
Your scope 1 goes down, and then that could lead to scope 2 and scope 3, right? I mean, it's kind of a stepping stone process there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, always scope 2 and scope 3. Scope 3 gets really challenging, yeah, right? Look at what your marketing firm is doing.
Exactly. Thanks. How much paper they printed out over there?
Yeah, we're getting rid of our printers. No. Well, those are interesting misconceptions. Just thinking out, the next 5 to 10 years, where do you see your industry going?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a good question, and obviously no one has that crystal ball, and if we did, we probably wouldn't be here. But I think the continued focus on what we're doing right now, you're seeing a focus on efficiency, emissions reductions, cost reduction, improving competitiveness in the manufacturing space. That's going to continue. But I think what's going to be interesting, and we kind of just touched on it, is this whole industrial electrification. How does this work with the power grid, right? I mean, you hear all the stories of in the U.S. and globally, the power grid's not set up to support all this. You've got all these data centers coming on, electric vehicles. Can the grid handle all of this additional electricity, and what's the impact on grid stability for everyday people, right? I mean, power goes down. What was it, a few weeks ago? Spain lost power and nothing works, right? No internet, no trains, no shops, nothing. So that's got to be an area that's going to have to be focused on and looked at, and something we're obviously paying close attention to and heavily involved in finding ways to support that move over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I was just yesterday. I was at a conference around these data centers, and they were talking about all the data centers that are coming into the state of Texas. And there's so many there on the rise here, and it seems like a state that is very business friendly, and they already have a lot of infrastructure and all these things. And so we're talking about what a fast growing market that is in Texas, and they were talking about all the power that these things use. The energy consumption is crazy, and that's kind of why they said, what we would like to do is it's easier to move set up the data center next to the gas well or where the energy is than it is to set up your data center over here and figure out how to get the energy to your plant. And so that was a really interesting thing. And then we always have challenges with our grid in Texas just because so many people have moved here and everything else. And so in the summertime when it gets hot, everybody wants to use their air conditioning, and we get these brownouts. And so you go, wow, we're really going to bring on 200 of these data centers online that are going to be energy hogs. So what does that mean for us, the people that have to live here?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I mean, for us, from Skyven's standpoint, I mean, again, it's something we're obviously looking at. And one of the cool things about Skyven Arcturus, which is the name of the heat pump, we in installing it in parallel, like I said earlier, so existing boilers stay, right? So we it's a fully interruptible grid flexible technology. So what that really means is we've got sensors and controls on this equipment, and during the process of engineering and early stage of the model, we are looking at localized at that facility level electricity prices. Can we work with utilities on different types of pricing? But what we come up with is what we call a strike price. So which goes back to this fuel switching concept of, hey, here's the price. If electricity is this price or lower, then Arcturus makes economical sense to run. And that takes in the efficiencies of the system and all these things. If for whatever reason the price of electricity spikes, or sometimes utilities will say, hey, we'll pay you to go off the grid, the heat pump it just flips off and the facility reverts back to its natural gas boilers. And this happens, the facility doesn't know this is happening. It's just the steam production continues. But it really allows us and the facility to have essentially the lowest cost, lowest emission steam at any point. So that's what we're doing to kind of help with this whole kind of grid strained concerns. But I think continued efforts and communications with utilities, policies, all these different things. And I think the industry, technology providers, and utilities are going to have to continue those conversations to really see how we can make all this work.
Yeah, that's right. I think that is one of the things they were talking about at that conference was that it's just like you got to think about the electric grid like you do the highways. And, of course, you feel like there's congestion when you get on a highway, especially here in Houston. We're kind of known for that. And you get on the highway here and you go, wow, look at all this traffic and so congested. And it's like that with the power lines. And so they said, we just need more transmission lines. And they're investing something crazy. Like the state of Texas and the state of California together are spending more than beefing up their grids than all the other states combined. And so it's I can't remember the exact figure, but it was, billions of dollars, and they're investing in the grid to kind of get ready for that, and just try to stay ahead of it and add more lanes to the freeway.
Exactly. Well, what was it, a few weeks ago? They had I-10 westbound, kind of out near me, but like Beltway 8 and west for a couple exits, completely shut down both directions over the weekend, which was a nightmare, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
But the reason was, I think it was Centerpoint was beefing up some of the electrical grid and transmission lines. So it's like, okay, that's probably needed. So we'll allow it. We'll allow you to do that, I guess.
Yeah, really. So no brownouts. Okay. Yeah. It'll be a little inconvenience on the Sunday morning. Oh man. So that's interesting. So as you think about that, and you talked to you guys are preparing for that in a nice way by being able to switch to the old way to your electric heat pump. What else do you see out there that you guys are preparing for down the road?
Yeah, and I think just specific for us is, so we developed this project or product to be kind of what we call software configured, software controlled from more of a design standpoint. So obviously every facility is different. all the way down to their electricity pricing, to the flow of the steam, the temperature they need, the pressure, the available space they have, all these different things, right? But we intentionally didn't want this to be a customized thing every single time, and that's kind of what historically in similar types of projects and products has been the hurdle. It turns into just a really lengthy process, right? So
Sure.
Having the design process, kind of what we call software configured, software controlled, allows us to make modifications and get the right set of different kind of components within our heat pump designed and out the door. And at the end of the day, that's really just to help with quicker, seamless integration at each of these facilities. So that's been a big focus of ours from the beginning. But I think as we continue 5 to 10 years down the road, outside of this whole electric grid and what offering with the fuel switching, is being able to get these projects installed and operating and really scaled out is the goal. So I think those are two of the big areas that we see that we're doing today that are going to help here down the road.
And that's really thinking ahead, because one of the things that I've noticed about these industrial plants, whether it's a refinery or a chemical plant or power plant, any of these things, I feel like they are so highly customized, and they are just, the maintenance people there have it just set up, and they're like, well, don't move a muscle, don't breathe on it, don't look at it directly. And so with all that customization, to add new equipment to that could be a real challenge, I think. And so being able to think that through one step ahead is amazing. I bet that's what will really reduce your guys' engineering cost, and you can pass that on to your customers, huh?
For sure. And again, it goes back to that no downtime, right? When a lot of those projects, you're having to shut the facility down. In some instances, we've seen them having to knock portions of the facility down and rebuild the process to fit this new equipment, right? It's so yeah, that's trying to make it as easy as possible and seamless. That's the idea.
That brings up a good point. What do you have to wait for there to be a turnaround in order to set up that equipment, or is it a massive turnaround? Can just be a regular maintenance shutdown? How does that work?
It can be a regular maintenance, nothing crazy. This is days, if that. Ideally, we line up with something that's already on the books to be done, and we'll take advantage of that downtime and plug, and it's a little more involved in that, but that's what we do, and then that's again how we kind of say there's no downtime during construction either. So we'll construct this thing on site. We're not interrupting the existing processes. And then when the time is right, we'll connect in and flip on, and the facility knows no difference where that steam is coming from, or everything just keeps on working.
Man, that's amazing. So is that like a weekend thing, or is it to install it, to actually get it hooked up, or is it like a week thing?
We'll call it weekender to weekend.
Okay.
Or a week, sorry, weekender to a week if needed. But yeah, it's quick in the sense of, you're not going to be, your facility is going to be up and running with emissions-free steam very quickly.
Well, that's great, because that will really reduce a lot of the friction for those customers, because time is money in that business for sure, more than, it's an old saying that people say, but I think in the industrial process world, they really mean it. It's more true there than other places, I think.
Very true.
So I guess we touched a little bit on, thought leadership is big for you guys, and kind of building out that case for energy as a service. What kind of tactics are you guys using from a marketing and sales perspective, and what's working, and what things are driving the greatest success for you guys?
Yeah, and I think being in we'll call it a new technology. It's slightly been around, but that education piece is that thought leadership is obviously very, very important. One, just to reduce kind of the potential risk. A lot of people think, oh, it's new, I don't want to try something new. So that's a big piece. So I mean, for us, speaking opportunities are great. Again, not from necessarily a selling standpoint, but just educating on the process, how this all can work, and what that looks like. But I think taking a step back and I use this term quite a bit, is fishing where the fish are, right? um, you've got to be where the people that you want to talk to are going to be there. Just blasting out things all over the internet or wherever is not, or at least for us, it doesn't work. So making sure we understand, hey, where are the people we want to talk to? Where are they? And let's be there. So connecting with customers, networking, if that's through events or trade shows or speaking opportunities or associations, whatever it may be, that to us, that's kind of step one. And along those same lines is being findable, right? You've got people that don't know you exist that you could help, or you have people that say, hey, I need that, I'm going to go look for it. And obviously you want to be findable to that side as well. So I think those are maybe oversimplified, but that's what we've been focusing on and have been successful. I think always positive feedback from the sales team is, hey, the people that are coming in from marketing are the right people, right? They're qualified. They're the right conversations to be having, and that's, to me, a very good signal that we're fishing where the fish are, and have the right kind of messaging to go along with it.
That's a really important aspect. You always hear the age-old fight between sales and marketing people of these leads sucked, and this kind of thing. But I think that salespeople have a good point to that a lot of times. That if you guys don't have a 400-person sales team out there, pounding the pavement, and if you waste their time with a bunch of crappy leads or send them the wrong people or send them down a dead end trail, which, there's a certain amount of, not every sale closes, right?
Yeah.
But you have to really be efficient and smart. And so, that helps you reduce your marketing costs. And it also is going to help the salespeople to be able to close deals faster and be able to have the right conversations. So many times the people are maybe not ready to buy today. I would imagine that you guys have a pretty long sales cycle for your business. What are you guys looking at from a sales cycle?
Could be, it can be quicker than this, but 12 to 18 months. I mean, it's a lengthy one, right? I mean, this is large equipment. They're not coming to the website and putting 2 in the cart and paying for it and going, right?
Not an impulse purchase. Oh man. And I think that having those technical conversations at conferences is such a powerful thing for your industry. I figured that's probably where the conversation starts, is with technical people in your organizations, huh?
Definitely. And and that's where those conversations happen, right? And sometimes they're very small niche type conversations or events, and then sometimes maybe within a larger, you're starting to see this more of these larger events that have certain tracks that are specific to a topic, and being able to land in those is we found some value in that.
Let's bring the conversation back to your personal growth. In marketing, I think marketers, you have to be a lifelong learner in this industry for sure. What's the biggest marketing lesson you've learned in your career?
That is a good question, and I agree. I think if you ask me this 5 years from now, it might be a completely different answer, right? Just
Sure.
kind of trying to continue to learn as things change. But I think a big one for me, and again, I think it goes back to early even in school, of thinking like, oh, I'm going into advertising and that's what I'm going to do, is not just blasting your features of your product or your company out there, right? That, or at least for where I am now, is not it. But the root of all of that is really listening to the customer, right? Understanding their pain points. And to me, that really drives everything, or everything should go back to that. Has been something, and it took me a little bit to figure that out. But once that kind of happens, and you're speaking the same language as your customers, and you're seen as a solution that is making their lives easier, then to me, that's the majority of the battle. So I think that's the biggest one, is just listen to your customer. They will talk, and they will tell you things that are very useful. So just listen.
I love that advice. And, I think that's really marketing's role, is to be that voice of the customer in the room. And I think in some industries that's harder than other industries. I think in engineering-led organizations, those conversations tend to start out with a technical solution or a technical challenge, or, engineers spend a lot of time engineering features. and not necessarily, translating that to the customer's needs or what's keeping the customer up at night. So yeah, that's great. How do you, when you, what's your process for going in and, when you talk to a very technical person to understand what this is all about, and then thinking about and translating that into what your customers want, and how do you go about finding out what it is that your customers really do want?
Yeah, well, it sounds so simple, right? Like, oh, just pick up the phone and call your customer. They'll answer and they'll talk to you for an hour and a half. Like, it's not that easy, right? It's they have lives, they have day to day, so it's not as easy as that. But I think what's kind of helpful to me, especially kind of early in career or early in a new kind of industry or company or role, is sitting in on those sales conversations, right? Even if you're just a fly on the wall and listening to both sides, so you're kind of learning about how they're talking about the product and service or technology, and then also kind of how that resonates with the customer. So I think that's and to still do that today too, is be a part of those conversations if they're scheduled meetings. And then back to kind of the events and networking is have the conversations, right? The right people are there. Maybe go out of your comfort zone, talk to some people that maybe you wouldn't normally, and you kind of pick up some cool things. But from a kind of going from that engineering to I kind of say digestible kind of languages, I think over time you kind of learn what's it's funny because most times people will say marketing it's all fluff, it's all, you're just adding adjectives and language in there just to do it. But I think on the engineering side, it's a little bit of, you can almost say the same of, okay, how do we just distill this down to what it is, right? Like, what is it doing? What is it doing at a facility? How is that impacting X, Y, and Z? And being able to tell that story. You hear people like, hey, can you explain that to me like I'm a 5-year-old?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the kind of what's in the back of the mind. I mean, maybe not to that level, but and along that process, especially internally, obviously don't be afraid to say, whoa, pause. What's exactly happening here? What does this little control sensor do? And who's it talking to? Like, you've got to be able to ask those questions, right? And understand it enough to have that conversation outside of the company.
That's a really good point. One of our permissions here we ask for all of our customers is the ability to ask stupid questions. Right. And they know this. Our clients are super smart and very technical, and they know that stuff up one side, down the other, and we are not, and we don't. And so we have to ask those stupid questions. But sometimes when we ask a stupid question to the audience, there's another really smart engineer in the room, and they're going, yeah, I've always wondered that. Like, what does that stand for? Or why do we do it that way? Or how does that work? And so it's really interesting to be able to ask those questions, and it frees up the rest of the room to go, to question things too.
Exactly.
So I guess, marketing, like we said before, marketing's always changing. What tactics or techniques are you looking forward to going forward?
Yeah, and I don't know if this is considered emerging at this point, but it's still kind of new to me. And you and I have kind of talked about it a few times in different times. Is kind of this old geofence, really targeted marketing, right? And I think you and I have even mentioned, I mean, at a trade show, if you can get to the granular level of, okay, this phone entered the booth, when they leave, can they get an ad or get a document download or whatever that is? I think it's super creepy, but I think it's kind of cool, right? That you're just taking that targeting to the next level. Again, it's a little creepy, right? That we kind of know where all these people are going and where they've been, anonymously, of course.
Yeah.
But I think that's one. And then obviously the biggest one that's out there, just AI, and how does this from a marketing standpoint, how do we use AI to improve what we're doing? I don't think, in personal opinion, I don't think AI is just going to replace marketing or any of these things, but how do we take advantage of it to improve either certain strategies, or, hey, take a look at this. Does this read right? I mean, simple things. I think there's a huge opportunity to just help improve our efficiencies from a marketing side with AI. So be curious to see how that all ends up going.
Yeah, I think that AI is something everybody wants to talk about, and every conference you go to, people are talking about it, and it's something that is really interesting. Something we're looking at here, and what I think one of the things, part of our organization, I'm the CEO of the organization, and so sometimes I say things, and I'm like, "Hey, we should explore some AI tools," and I mean it just like that. But I think people here, like Richard said, we got to find some AI tools, and it's like came back with all this stuff, and we're using all these things, and I'm like, "Whoa, hold on!" Like it is improving our efficiency, but we have to worry about governance. We have to worry about process. How's this affecting our processes, and can we standardize on one, because we don't need 20 subscriptions to this stuff. And so, trying to figure out how to use all these tools, and is also thing. And I think that's the other part you talked about. I think it's just a tool really right now. I think who knows what's going to happen at some point, if these things reach singularity and quantum computing comes up and all that other stuff, and then we'll just be, pets to the to the cyborg. But I think until that point, it's just a tool. But I think it can, I heard somebody talking about it the other day, and they said that, I would like to be 50 IQ points higher, and AI lets me do that. And I feel like, yeah, that's right. I think that's a great way to use it. If I can make my whole team 50 IQ points higher, great. That's it. And, that will get me about to average, I think, if I could get extra 50. So I'll be really looking good if I can get that.
Well, I'll in full transparency, AI helped me come up with the murmuration of starlings at the
Whoa,
so
there you go.
Powerful stuff,
I know. I did not know what a murmuration is, so that's great. Yeah, see, 50 IQ points right there. What advice would you give to a young marketing person just getting into the industry?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And it's always kind of looking back, like, what did I wish that I kind of knew, kind of thing. But I think, and I've said it a few times already today, is listen, right? I think obviously to customers and you'll learn things, but also internally. If it's sales, if it's engineering, if it's the C-suite, if it's the operations floor, if it's the maintenance manager, whoever, just listen and just kind of soak up all of that, that information, right? I mean, one, and that kind of to me leads to building your network. I think is super important within your industry, within your field. Is important. It could be as simple as a LinkedIn request, or it could be attending local marketing events and meetings or different trade shows. But just build out that network. You never know when you're going to cross paths, or you can help them, they can help you, whatever that looks like. I think are two big things that are important, especially early in a career.
That's a really good point. I think especially in technical industries, I think if you don't have a little bit of curiosity about technology and how things work and why they are a certain way, you'll really not like that business. And I've seen that happen to marketing people who kind of get sucked into these technical organizations because they think, oh, it's a big company, they'll have good benefits, it'll be a good place to work. And then they get in there and go, oh my God, this is the most boring thing I've ever seen in my life. And so, but if you have that curiosity and you want to learn, then it can be really fascinating. We have a client that sells sucker rods for rod lift. And it's like, I was going into it and I was like, this is got to be so simple and boring. And then we started learning about their technology with some of the things they're doing. I'm like, this is crazy interesting. It's so cool. Yeah. But yeah, it makes a big difference, how your attitude and how you approach those things. I guess, what haven't we talked about that we should have talked about earlier?
Well, I was going to add on one here that I failed to mention it a few times, just in marketing in general. I don't know if this is either from my career or whatever, but it's something I'm challenging myself to do. And I found it helpful here as of late in the last 5 years or so is just busting assumptions. And that can be internally. Everyone has assumptions. It could be as simple as, oh, I thought so-and-so was going to handle that, to, oh, I assume that the customer couldn't do this because of X, Y, and Z, and it's just an assumption. So it came up in a a previous role, but busting assumptions from as simple to that as the difficult ones, but ask those questions and I'm just going to say it again, bust assumptions is something that I think is it just helps everyone be on the same plane, and you're not getting too far down a path with then realizing, oh, that wasn't what it was supposed to be, kind of thing. So wanted to squeeze that one in there.
That's a great one. I had a friend, and he was a marketing consultant, and he, on his business card, he said he put his title as Challenger of Cherished Assumptions. And I was like, oh, that's great. There are a lot of cherished assumptions in business, and breaking out of orthodoxy, I think, is really important to understand, what really is it, can we push back on that? Especially look in your industry. If they would have said, no, gas boilers are the way we've done it for 400 years, and that's just the way it is. and all that. So there's always a better way.
Very true.
Wow. All right, Chris. Well, it was great having you on the show. And where can people find you?
Yeah, all over the place, right? In Houston is where I sit, but feel free to connect on social, LinkedIn and things, but I'm around, and especially if you're an industrial manufacturer or know someone that is, don't hesitate to ping us. We'd love to just see if steam generating heat pump is an opportunity to improve your facility and do it with no capex involved, right?
Great. All right, Chris. Well, best of luck to you over at Skyven Technologies, and we'll talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks, Richard. Enjoyed it.
All right, Chris. Thanks.
That's a wrap on today's episode. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing, sharing, or spreading the news about us on your favorite channel. Thank you for tuning into Above the Clouds, Stories from the Boardroom. Until next time, stay above the clouds.